Today, we're going to build a basic blog using Next.js 13 app router, and we're going to hook that up to a content management system, also called a CMS or headless CMS, which is basically going to allow us to create content in this graphical user interface, and it's going to expose different endpoints in which we can use Next.js to then make queries to those endpoints to get our different blog posts or a single blog post, and we can create new blog posts and it will automatically update in our application because it just exposes these endpoints. And this CMS, we're going to use a product called Ghost. It's going to be completely free to use in this tutorial, but we're going to use this product in which it will allow us to create our different posts or different blog posts within this graphical user interface and then update them in Next.js, and we're going to connect the two in this application. So you're going to learn a lot about kind of using this CMS as a blog database and then hooking it up to Next.js. We're going to use some dynamic routes. We're not going to focus a lot on styling and a ton of additional functionality that you might have. We're going to focus on the basic core functionality of having a blog in Next.js and hooking up to a headless CMS. So without further ado, let's head over to VS Code and get started. So I'm over here in VS Code, and the first thing that we need to do is install our needed packages. So really the first thing that we need is just creating a template Next.js. So what I'm going to do is run npx create -next-app at latest. And this is going to give us some different prompts here. I'm going to call this basic blog. I'm not going to use TypeScript, but you're free to use TypeScript if you're familiar with it and would like to use it. I just tend to use JavaScript because I think that if you know TypeScript, you could still do this course in TypeScript, but if you don't, it might be a little bit tricky. But now that we have this installed, I'm going to go File, Open, and open this within VS Code. So here we have just a template Next.js app, and if I open my app directory, and this is using the app router in the latest version of Next.js, which we can see in my package.json right now is Next.js 13.4.19. So if you're following along with this project, maybe in the future, and we're on a later version, it might not be a bad idea to kind of pin Next.js to this specific version as well as React and React DOM, just to make sure that you are on the same page as me. But here's our basic page.js. And if in the terminal we run npm run dev, this is going to start our local server on localhost 3000. So now I can open this within my Google Chrome web browser. And you can see this adds just the blanket template here. But now that we have this installed, what we need to do is we need to now install. I'm going to open up a new terminal window here by clicking that plus icon. Now we need to install the Ghost Content API client library. And this is going to allow us to connect effectively to our Ghost backend so we can use our blog posts within our application. So what we're going to do is npm install @try ghost /content -API. So we're going to install this. And now that this is installed, we can actually start connecting our Ghost API. So within my app folder, I'm going to add a new folder and I'm going to just call this Ghost. And then within this Ghost folder, I'm going to just do like post.js because we're going to use this to get all of our posts as well as to get a single post. So I have this, and then to use our Ghost API, our content API that we just installed, we need to import Ghost Content API from @tryghost /content API. And then after importing this, we need to create a new instance of our content API. So the way we can do this is set const API is equal to new Ghost Content API. And then we're going to call that function. And then we're going to pass in an object. And this object is going to contain a URL, which is going to point to our Ghost dashboard, which we will create in just a second. And then it's also going to contain a key, so an API key, which we are also going to create in just a second. And then it's also going to contain a version, which in our instance is just going to be v5.0. So now that we have this in place, what we need to do is we need to go create a free Ghost account here and go get a URL as well as a key, so we can basically connect this API to our Ghost backend, allowing us to use posts within our application. So if I go back to my web browser here, I'm going to go to this URL, https://account.ghost.org/signup. So when you do this, you first have to choose like a certain template. Now, we're not actually going to use this template because we're just going to use the API that Ghost exposes. We aren't going to use any of these templates. So I'm just going to, click on the first one, but it really doesn't matter what theme you decide to use. And then for this public name, I'm going to just do basic blog, and then brand color. This also doesn't matter, but I tend to use like this tealish blue in a lot of my videos. And I'm just going to say demo blog app as my publication description. I'm a creator. And then here I'm going to put in an email address and password. And if you are interested in one-on-one tutoring, you can go ahead and email me at ryan@coderyan.io. I'm considering kind of offering that and doing that. And I think that I would kind of like to do it with just, a few people. So if you're interested, you can shoot me an email there. But we're going to click continue here. And then it does make you put in your card number. However, they mention that they verify cards to prevent spam. You will not be charged. So you definitely won't be charged. I would say once you kind of finish this setup, maybe go to your account settings and take your card number out right away just to be safe is what I would recommend. But for now, it's not going to charge you anything up front. This is totally free. I know it kind of sucks that you still have to put in a card number, but hopefully you can still continue to move forward. But I'm going to go ahead and put in my name, and I'm going to put in my card number. I'm not going to clearly show you this, but once I put in my card number, I'm going to click continue. And that'll take a second to install there. But once it's done, you can see all done. Your brand new publication is set up and ready to go. So now that this is set up, what we need to do is we need to get our URL as well as our key that we can use within our kind of API client setup. So our URL is actually going to be whatever URL is ending with .io right here in our URL. So mine is going to be basic-blog.ghost.io, but yours might be something different depending what you name this. But I'm going to go ahead and copy this up to .io, and then I'm going to head back to my application. I'm going to paste that in my URL here, and I'm not going to include the trailing slash. I'm going to get rid of that. And then to get your key, what you need to do is and first we're going to write our first post. I'm going to say post 1. This is my post. Look how great my post is. I'm saying a lot without actually saying anything. And then I'm going to publish this, and I've now published my post. So I'm going to go back to editor, and I'm going to go back to post, and now it brings me back to like this dashboard here. And I need to add or import members. I'm going to add myself as a test member here. So I'm going to just click on Ryan Solomon, and then I'm going to save. So now if I go back to dashboard, I can see this Ghost dashboard gives me some different analytics based on like different members, and I can see my different posts here. So it starts with just like a default post that you can delete or get rid of. And this is what's cool about this like content management system is that, I can add new posts just using this graphical interface here pretty easily. So I can add a second post, and I could add an image if I want, but I can say post 2. And then, this could contain a lot of words of like a blog post. And then you can just click publish and it will publish this post here. And now we have 3 posts here. And then within our Next.js app, we can hit this Ghost API and get all of our posts and display our blogs. So this would allow you to, if you had a blog, well, you could just create new posts in here and then just automatically have that updated in Next.js, which is pretty cool. And it really makes it pretty easy because if you did have a blog, you wouldn't really want to go and like keep all that code managed within your Next.js application. You'd probably want some sort of database with all of your blog posts. So this is effectively acting as our database and allowing us to kind of wire it up to Next.js. But in order to be able to use the API from Ghost, you need to click on this gear icon down here, right in the bottom left of your screen. Click on that and then go to integrations. And then you are going to do add custom integration. And I'm going to say basic blog. And then I'm going to click create. And now after clicking create here, you can see that I have a content API key as well as an admin API key and an API URL. I am not going to be showing you this because it's kind of sensitive information here, but right next to content API key, you should see an API key, a set of letters and numbers. I'm going to go ahead and click copy on that and then head back to our application here within VS Code. And where it says key, I'm going to paste my API key here. So now I've gone ahead and added my API key to this Ghost content API. So now I have my URL, my key, as well as my version, which is all I need to connect Next.js to my API. And now that I have this in place, we can add a function within this post file to get all of our blog posts. And the way that we do this is export async function get posts, and then I'm going to return await api.posts.browse. And then I'm going to call browse and I'm going to pass it an object. And we can set various parameters here, like we can filter and do all this stuff, and you can check the Ghost documentation if you want to do more of that. You can see that at ghost.org/docs, and they have a bunch of great documentation. I actually really like their documentation, and it's really easy to follow along with. So that can be checked out if you want to add more filter operations here. But we're going to add a limit here, and it defaults to 5, I believe. So 5 posts, but we're going to make this all. So it's going to give us all posts. But then if there's an error, we want to catch that error. I'm just catching it as E. And then we are going to console.error. And this is where you might do some like reporting to like Sentry.io or something like that. But we're just going to catch the error in console.error, that error. So literally by just calling this new Ghost content API, passing a URL key and a version, and then calling get posts here to get all of our posts, that allows us to get all of our posts from our Ghost API. Now, how can we actually use this within Next.js? Well, it is super easy because within Next.js server components, all we need to do is make a request to our API here. We don't need to do anything like get static props, which is probably what we would do here. We can just do this automatically. So I'm going to remove all of this kind of boilerplate code here. So I'm just going to leave a main tag here. And overall, within this application, we're not going to focus much on styles. You can feel free to do that after we do this. I'm going to just focus more on the main core functionality here, show you how this works. And then you can take this, basic blog implementation and then run with it using what we kind of set up here today. But what we need to do here is I'm going to just do an H1 and I'm going to change this to JSX so I get better code completion. And I'm going to change this to H1 and I'm going to say blog feed. And then below this, we're just going to render out our blogs. So I'm going to say const blog posts is equal to, and what did we name it's get posts. So blog post is equal to await get posts. And then I'm going to call this function. And then I need to export default async function here. And for now, let's just console.log our blog posts. So now if I go back to my homepage of localhost 3000, you see that I have blog feed. And if I refresh this, and then if I check my console here, remember, this is a server component here by default in Next.js. So I didn't use use client at the top of this. So it defaults to a server component. So this should be console logged within Node.js here on the back end. So if I go to my running application here, you should see console logged out that I have blog posts, which I do. And these are my different blog posts. So my first blog post has an ID, and then it has a title of post 2, a slug of post 2, and then it has my HTML content within it. And it also has like a little excerpt of my blog post. It has the URL of the blog post that I can view it at. So it has all the data I need. It has created at, published at, and basically all the data to render out this blog post, which is pretty cool. And then here, if I scroll down, I can see my post number 1. I see the HTML for it. I have a certain slug for it, and I have all the information I need to start rendering this blog post out, which is pretty dang cool. And then here is my kind of the default blog post that they give us with a title, the HTML, and all that stuff. So what I can do here is I can create a components folder. We'll call this components. And then within my components folder, I'm going to create a component called blog post.jsx. And then I'm going to export a default function blog post. And for now, let's accept the props of title as well as HTML. And then we are going to return a div in which it has let's do like an H3, and then let's render out our title. And then let's also just render out our HTML, which is going to be a paragraph tag with our content of our blog post. And then just maybe for some styles here, let's just do some quick styles so this doesn't look too gross. Let's do blog styles as a constant, and it's going to be an object in which let's just set a border of 1 pixel solid white. And then let's also give this maybe some padding of 20 pixels and maybe some margin of 20 pixels. And then within my div, I'll do styles equal to blog styles. And then within my homepage, what I can do now is I have my blog post, which I believe this was an array of objects, and it is indeed an array of objects. So I can just map over this and render out a blog post for each one of my blog posts. So here, I can do blog posts dot map. Then I can accept a post, pass in an inline function here, mapping over it. And I can return a blog post. And this blog post, it accepts a title is equal to post dot title. And then the HTML is equal to post dot HTML. And then I also need to give it a key, which I'll just do post dot. I believe they have an ID on them. And let me just make sure. Yes, they do have an ID. So here we are returning a blog post with a title and our HTML and rendering that to our page. So now if we look at our blog feed, we see a very beautiful blog feed of these incredibly well-styled blog posts. And then as you can see here, we're actually rendering out like p tags here, which we actually don't want to do. So let's refactor this a little bit. I want to actually do formats, and then we just want to do plain text here. So now instead of HTML as a property, we just have plain text. So let's actually adjust this. We're going to render out plain text, and I'm going to render that here, and I'm going to actually render it within a p tag here. And we're going to get rid of this, render out plain text within a p tag. And then here, instead of HTML, we're going to do plain text, and we're going to do post dot plain text. So now if I go back, we see we are rendering out our post title, as well as our plain text. But within our blog feed, we're probably not going to want to render out all of our plain text for our entire blog post. We would probably want to be able to just like click on a blog post here and go view each individual blog post. And within our blog feed, maybe we just see an excerpt of our blog post. So if we come back, what we can do here is we actually have a property called excerpt. Now, since our blog posts are so short, then it's not really going to make much of a difference for what we see. But like if this was a more realistic blog, you might have blog posts that are super long. So you would see a big difference here. So what I'm actually going to do here is for my blog post, I'm going to say excerpt is equal to post.excerpt. And then within my blog post, I'm going to say excerpt, but I'm going to default it to null. And I'm going to say within my rendering here, I'm going to say excerpt ? Then render out my excerpt. Else render out my plain text. So if I use this blog post function and I pass an excerpt, then this component is going to know to just use the excerpt. Else it's going to use the plain text or the entire blog post. And where this is going to come in handy. So yeah, we're not going to see much of a change here because in our case, our blog posts are so short. It's the same length as our excerpt, but for longer blog posts, you would definitely see this difference. But where this is going to come into play is like in our blog feed, we just want to see the excerpt. But now let's add functionality to where we can click on a blog post and that will actually take us to that specific blog post. And we can do that in Next.js using dynamic routes. So to set up this functionality to where we click on one of our posts here and then it navigates us to that specific post so we can read the full post and not just the excerpt. What we can do first is we can set this up within our post.js file here first. So we need to set up a function to just get one single post from this Ghost content API. So what we can do is we can export an async function called get post, just singular, and it's going to take a post slug. And then what it's going to do is it's going to return await API.posts.read. And then we're going to call read, pass in an object, and then we're going to set slug is equal to post slug. And then we're going to do the same thing to where we .catch and error, and then we're just going to console.error this error. So this will allow us to get a single blog post based on the post slug, which we do have access to, or we will have access to. So this is going to be our API request that we make, but now we need to make our dynamic route. So for our dynamic route, what we're going to do is we are going to create a new folder and we're going to call this posts. And then within posts, we're going to create a dynamic route called square bracket post slug square bracket. And then within this, we are going to create a page.jsx file. And then we're going to export default function post. And it's going to take a params prop. And then we are going to first, let's just console.log our params here. And then let's return our main tag. And then we're going to have an h1. And it's just going to say post. And then eventually we're going to use our params to make our request that is within our post.js file. We're going to use our params to pass our post slug to this get post to get a single post when we land on this page here. But first, I just want to make sure that this is working as we expect. So if I come back and let's add these styles here. So I'm going to import styles from my module.css. So let's come back. I'm going to import styles from, and then here I can do @app/page.module.css. And then I can set my class name is equal to styles.main. So now if I go back to my app here, I should be able to go to posts, and then I'll just say just posts 1. And if I come here, I see I have an H1 of post, but then if I come back and I look, I should have console logged my params, which has post slug of 1. So this is working correctly, but now what I need to do is each blog post, I need to navigate to my correct post slug for this blog post. So as another parameter here, I'm going to add post slug, and then I need to add a link to go view a blog post. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a Next.js link, and I'm going to say view post within this link, but then my href, well, that's going to be a template string in JavaScript in which it's going to be /post/ and then it's going to navigate to my post slug. So now for my blog post within my page.jsx, we need to make sure to add a post slug. And I think that is post dot, I want to say it's like post, but let me actually check our posts here. So we have our slug right here. So it's not post slug, it's just slug. So slug. So what we're doing here is when mapping over our blog post here, we are rendering out a blog post and adding a post slug to it, which is basically just like a unique identifier for it. And then within our blog post component, we're adding a link that navigates to /post/post slug using the post slug passed in. And this is going to take us to post /post slug. And then on these params here, I'll have params.postslug, or at least I should. So let's come all the way back here and let's just go back to localhost 3000. And now I see I have this view post link. So if I click on this, it navigates me to post /post2. And if I come back to my terminal and I check out what I have here, I have my post slug, which is post2. So I can say const post slug is equal to params dot post slug. And now I can call my const post is equal to await get post, and then I can pass in my post slug to my get post function, and I can export a async function here. And now that I have my post, or I theoretically have my post, what I can do is I can just render out my blog post. And when rendering out my blog post, I can do my title is equal to my post.title. And then I can do my plain text is equal to post.plain text. And I think that's all I'll need to render out. And what we're going to do here again is if I have my excerpt, then I'm going to render out my link. But if I don't pass an excerpt, I'm not going to render the link. So the way that we can do this within React is just do excerpt, &, and then I'll render out my link here. So if I have this excerpt, it's going to render out my link. But if I don't, it's not going to, because I don't think this link would make a ton of sense if we were indeed just rendering out a single post. So let's go back here and we see I now have my post number 2. And again, my styles are just pretty glorious here, but let's go back and see this all working in action. So I render out all of my posts within my blog feed. And then if I click on post 1, it goes to post, and then it renders out post 1 here as my title, but I am missing my content text. So I realized what I've done here. So let's go back, and within post.js, I need to add formats of plain text here again. So I'm going to go ahead and add formats of plain text. And then now if I come back, I do have my text of my post. So I can come back to my home page, and if I go to my coming soon post, I see it's post, and then coming soon is the title, and then I have everything here. So this has allowed us to render out all of our blog posts within a blog feed. And then if we click on one individual post, it renders out this dynamic row in which it gets the individual blog post here. And of course, you can improve the styles here a ton and add more functionality, but like this is hooked up a blog backend to Next.js here. And you can add as much as you want here and have just a very simple basic blog that you manage the content of from our Ghost CMS, which is pretty cool that we already have that set up. Now, let's add one last thing here because we have to keep using our URL to navigate here. So let's just add like a basic header here so we can navigate between our pages. So for components, let's do new file, and I'm going to do header.jsx and export a default function header. And then we're going to return a header that is going to be a nav. It's going to be an unordered list in which the first li is just going to have blog feed. And then the second, well, honestly, we just need somewhere to link back to our homepage. So I think that we're fine with just putting blog feed here in our header, but now we do need to wrap a link around this from next link, and then let's render that out within blog feed. And if you wanted to add like an about page, to add an about section, you could also add this to your header here, but I just want to add a link back to my blog page. So this is going to be an href of our home route. And then within my route layout here, I am going to render out my header component so we can see this on all pages. And I need to make sure I import my header here from my component/header. And if we come back, I see blog feed here. Let's add just a little bit of style here, just so it doesn't look quite so gross. So let's just do style is equal to padding of, let's just do like 30 pixels. And then we definitely don't want the dot there. So for my unordered list, I'm going to do style. I'm going to do list style type is going to be none. So we have a link back to our blog feed now, so I can view a post. I can see my post here, and then it links back to my blog feed. I don't like how it adds this scroll bar here, so I can actually add position absolute here, and then it removes that scroll bar. If I go to post 2, goes to post 2. If I go to this post, we see coming soon, and so on and so forth. So here you have a very basic introductory blog in which you have a blog feed, as well as you can click on a post and see that individual post and head back to your blog feed and so on and so forth. And you could add like an about section up here if you wanted to add another page, but this is how you can add a very basic blog using Next.js and the Ghost CMS. So I hope you learned a lot from this quick basic tutorial here. I definitely recommend to extend this and add more styles, especially add functionality. But hopefully this gives you a good idea of how you can hook up a CMS to your Next.js applications and just start up with a very basic blog feed. So thanks for tuning into this, and I'll see you in that next one.